Shouldn't turn this off between services, because then I never know if I'll turn it back on again. So our reading today kind of shows you where we're headed, and it's all about it's about being courageous enough to see the truth. And it's September already, which I can't even believe, but the theme for September is support for the journey. And the journey I'm talking about is the journey of integration of what we've excavated while we were looking at our shadow self, and how we integrate that and recognize and become conscious of our wholeness. This integration, this embracing every bit of ourselves as spiritual beings having a human experience, is part of the path, the spiritual path that we walk in life. And of course, as you know, it does require courage. This delving deeply into ourselves, it requires courage, and sometimes we get frightened. And it requires strength, and sometimes we feel tired, and it requires a desire to grow, and sometimes we just want to take a day off from growing, which of course we can't do because we're always growing. But we never stop sort of incorporating ourselves with ourselves and with whatever next layer we've uncovered. And I found that this practice of loving kindness, this deep practice of loving kindness, has become very helpful to me. Because if I can treat myself with loving kindness, I can treat the rest of the world with loving kindness as well. And that it's harder for me to be loving and kind towards myself. I mean, that's where it has to start, and it has to be deeply done. We have to embrace ourselves with complete loving kindness, because that lets us stay open-hearted to life. It lets us give love unconditionally. And so part of what we've been retrieving as we've talked about the shadow this last couple of months is all the conditions that we place upon love. You know, they're in us, and we bring them out with whenever it is that we're expressing that in the world. So where we're headed next is into some practices that will allow all of us to walk in the world with greater love and fewer conditions, with more kindness and a more open heart. So we'll talk about some characteristics of loving kindness, which interestingly is something that I had always understood as coming from the Buddhist tradition, but it's found in every tradition if you look. And the framework that I'm using right now comes from Judaism, and it's wonderful, and the practices are deep. And so we'll talk about some of these practices that let us build deep loving kindness for ourselves and in ourselves so that it goes out into the world. And so today I want to talk about the obstacle to all of that. I think it seems sometimes like there's lots of obstacles, but I really think there's only one, and that is fear. I think everything springs from that. John Lennon, mystic in his own right, said, there are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we're afraid, we pull back from life. When we're in love, we open to all that life has to offer, with passion, excitement, and acceptance. And then he said, evolution and all hopes for a better world rest in the fearlessness and open-hearted vision of people who embrace life. That's enough reason right there for me, you know, to work toward replacing fear with love, and to get rid of the conditions, and to more fully participate in the evolution of this whole that we're part of, and in the creation of a better world. Becoming fearless and open-hearted towards life. I love that concept. So to replace fear with love, the first thing we have to do is acknowledge the fear, know the fear a little better, learn about it a little bit better. We are these interesting paradoxical creatures, spiritual beings in human form. And our human form is, of course, highly evolved animal form. And so we have some instincts for self-preservation that are important. They're part of our DNA, and biological need to protect ourselves is part of who we are. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fears we put on top of those instinctive responses, the stories we create about our fears that we tell and retell ourselves, and all about being afraid and what we're afraid of and what's going to happen the next time, and all those stories that we tell ourselves. I call it the fear of the fear. It's not the original fear itself, it's just the story we've told ourselves about it. It's interesting to realize that we're born with only two fears. Infants fear only loud noises and falling, the sensation of falling, because their nervous systems can't process it. So we're born with two. Isn't that amazing? And babies don't fear snakes or dogs or cats or other people or anything else. We learn all that. We make it up and carry it around with us and tell ourselves stories about it. And it gets farther and farther away from the scary incident, but we still have the story. And we'll tell it to anyone who'll listen, right? The good news is that what we have learned we can unlearn, and what we have created in our minds we can unmake in our minds and replace with something else. There's a Japanese proverb that says, fear is only as deep as the mind will allow. And we've discovered that that sometimes is very deep. The mind allows very deep fear to happen. And part of working through it is just to say, yes, it's there. Just acknowledge it. To acknowledge that it's a scary thing to delve deeply into yourself, to do this spiritual work. We're afraid of what we might find. And we're afraid that we might have to relive something that was shameful or embarrassing or fearful, humiliating, something stored in our memory somewhere. We'll have to relive it. We're afraid to even talk about it. Because what if they find out? Who are they anyway? And what is it they're going to find out? I finally realized that I didn't know the answers to those questions, but I was still saying to myself, what if they find out? Didn't know who they were. Still don't. Oh well. We continue to tell the story of the fear to ourselves, and we get further and further away from the original circumstance, but we're still telling the story. We're still fearful of opening our hearts. Just keeps us closed off to life and to other people and to love. This is the fear of fear. It's what we continue to tell ourselves about what we're afraid of, and it colors every potential experience we could have with fear. Once he didn't mean to do it, and I don't know what was up with him that day, but one day I came home with a spelling test and I had 9 right and 1 wrong, and my dad sort of humiliated me because I missed 1. It was not his common practice, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so humiliated. So after that, every time I went to take a test, I'd think, God, what if that happens again? What if I make a mistake and I get humiliated by my dad again? I carried it around forever, for a really long time. It was the fear of the fear of the fear. And finally, I realized that that was not how he did things. It was very unlikely to happen again, and was able to let it go. But, when I was taking the bar exam many years later, there were people in there who'd pass out from exam fear. It amazes me how powerful we are and how much we can mess ourselves up. So why not just give up the fear of the fear? Why not just give up that extra layer that we've put on top? And Martin Amis, who's a writer, I think a British writer, said, some people eat fear soup 3 times a day. Some people eat fear soup all the meals there are. He said, I eat it sometimes. When they bring me fear soup to eat, I try not to eat it. I try to send it back, but sometimes I'm afraid to, and I eat it anyway. Sometimes we do. But the first clue is to be aware of what we're eating. Fear of the fear. That's the ingredient of fear soup. It's not real fear, it's the fear of the fear. The fear that we might experience fear. We might experience humiliation. We might experience embarrassment or shame. See if you can identify what's in there, because awareness is curative. Lama Surya Das calls awareness wise awareness, the opposable thumb of consciousness development. I love that. The opposable thumb of consciousness development is simply wise awareness, which means, awareness that doesn't try to classify and pigeonhole everything. Gives us the power to include knowledge and intelligence and memory and critical thinking and creativity and introspection and self-understanding and all those other things, none of which we can do without that opposable thumb of wise awareness. So see if you can identify when you eat fair soup, under what circumstances. Where are you telling yourself stories about your fears? See if you can identify the ingredients. Like, what am I really afraid of? What am I really afraid of here? Not what's the story, but what am I really afraid of? I found that if I'm angry or jealous or contemptuous or resentful or just about any other negative emotion, I can actually find underneath it the fear that something is going to happen or the fear that something is going to be taken away. If I'm jealous, it's because I'm afraid someone's going to steal my partner, or that I will never get this thing that person has that I'm jealous of. If I'm feeling contempt for someone, it might be because I'm afraid they're going to show me up. They're going to look better than I am. We all do that kind of stuff. So why not just stop eating that soup, and instead look at the fear and say, there it is. This is what I'm really afraid of. Sometimes it's not so clear. Sometimes it takes some investigation to figure out what it is. For example, those great promises we make every New Year's, we call them resolutions. We're not resolute about them at all, are we? Most of us last, 10 days, 2 weeks? Many times for me they're about my relationship with my body. I will eat healthier. I will exercise more. I won't eat so much junk. I'll lose weight, whatever it is. And then 10 days later, it's me and Sarah Lee all over again. We're having a party. There is a need underneath all that, and a fear that need is not going to be met. And the need is, if I don't eat this, what will nourish me? If I don't eat this, what then will nourish me? We all need all kinds of nourishment, spiritual nourishment, affections, affectionate, someone bearing loving kindness to us, and us bearing it for ourselves, of course. There are lots of needs that we have, and sometimes we mistake the need to have the party with Sarah Lee with that need. So what is the need underlying that if I don't eat this, what will nourish me? And then, of course, relationships are like one of the best places to find these things out, aren't they? Spousal relationships with a spouse or partner, with our kids, with our coworkers, with our close friends. It's all over the place there. We will find who we need in order to work out our stuff. We always find that person. Whenever my husband is teaching me something, I get angry. I wind up angry and like looking for things to attack him about. And it's really crazy because he's teaching me how to do something I don't know how to do already. Something about his tone of voice reminds me of my dad's tone of voice when I was a little kid. And the part of me that reacts is the little kid who is afraid of looking foolish. If I don't know, I'll look foolish. I used to have a huge dread of looking foolish in front of people. So my first full-time job, was for a woman who liked to pull out an employee and chew them out in front of everybody else. And every time she did, it wasn't usually me who was getting chewed out, but it didn't matter. My stomach was still just tying itself in knots. I hated that. It's so awful. It's crazy ridiculous for me to realize that I'm learning something and I'm resentful because he's teaching it to me. It's crazy. It's crazy. I cover the fear of looking foolish with anger. The difference now is that I'm willing to say, I'm afraid I'm going to look foolish. To whom? Mark, who already knows I don't know how to do it? Hello? It's so crazy. It's just crazy stuff we do. But yes, that's exactly right. I'm afraid I'm going to look foolish to Mark, who already knows I don't know how to do it. The other part of it is that I'm afraid that I won't be useful if I don't already know. I grew up thinking I had to be useful to be worthwhile. So now, look at this. I have the job where my main function is simply to be, not to do. And I have an opportunity every week to look foolish in front of all of you. That's the coolest thing ever. It is. I found the opportunity that would try me until I could accept that maybe I could do that. And maybe I wouldn't look foolish. And maybe being is really what life's all about. And I don't have to be useful, I just have to be me. With an open heart, you know? We always find just the situation that we need. Harriet Lerner wrote The Dance of Anger and a whole lot of other books, and she said, fear is a message, sometimes helpful, sometimes not, but often conveying critical information about our beliefs, our needs, and our relationship to the world around us. So the first question is, what is this trying to tell me? What is this trying to teach me about myself? What belief might underlie that fear? What unmet need is there here? We have to lean close to the fear, and everything in us says, no, 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 run away. Don't lean in. But we have to lean in a little bit and look at it and say, what is this about, really? What's this teaching me? What is this giving to me? For me, it was that I didn't love myself I didn't love myself enough to just think that being was enough. I had to do something for you. I remember a woman years ago, actually coming up on 27 years, just sort of said, I want to be your friend. I said, oh, I'll make you dinner. She said, you don't have to make me dinner. I just want to be your friend. I just want to hang out with you and get to know you. And I said, well, I'll make you lunch then, you know? She said, you don't have to do anything. You just have to be who you are. It stunned me. Because I'd never thought about it that way, that I could just be who I was. Wow, amazing. I've always had this thing about being useful, doing things, all of that kind of stuff, and it's taken me a long time to just love the beingness. But I'll tell you one thing, that the only person who can change your beliefs about yourself is you. And the only person who can meet those deep needs is you. No one else can do it from the outside. And so in order to meet those needs, you have to be aware of what they are. And in order to love yourself better, you have to know that you don't. And in order to change a belief that gives rise to a fear, you have to be able to see the belief. You have to lean into it a little bit. And then you have to apply certain spiritual tools, which is what we're all about here. We're always teaching spiritual tools that our founder Ernest Holmes gave us, and others that we gather from other people. For example, we have this affirmative prayer that we call spiritual mind treatment, because it treats our mind to the truth. And it is a powerful, ingenious tool for changing belief. And we have all of our classes teach it. I'm going to try to put together a short course, maybe 3 weeks, 3 sessions of how you can use the spiritual tool. It's a very powerful way to get at those deep-rooted beliefs and change them. And of course, we incorporate them from other places too. And when we receive the offering, there'll be another basket passed around, I think. Is that how we decided to do it? Ushers?
A lot of people already have them.
Okay, you may already have them. It's those 4 questions from Byron Katie that we talked about last week. They're just as useful here. Because if you ask yourself about your fear, is it true? Is this likely to really happen? Are you absolutely certain that it's true? And how do you react when you believe it's true? And how would you feel if you couldn't have that fear? Those questions are extremely valuable here as well. So if you didn't get one, we'll pass the basket around and you can take one out of it. These questions are enormously powerful in gaining a perspective on fear. I mean, most of the time I never get past the first one. Of course it's not true that I'm going to look foolish in front of Mark because I don't know something that he already knows I don't know how to do, right? I'm not going to look foolish. I'll probably look foolish if I get mad at him and storm out of there after he's given me the information I need. That might look foolish, but the fear that the thing that I'm afraid of coming to pass is not likely to actually happen. And I can never be absolutely certain that it's going to happen until afterward. And how I react when I believe it's true is badly. I get mad, I look for things to attack him with. It's not pretty. And how I feel when I don't have that thought is that I could learn something calmly, gratefully, peacefully, and that would make me very happy. That would make me very happy. I'm going to work on this one. I have to keep working on it. I have to keep working on integrating the part of me that is afraid of looking foolish, the part of me that is afraid of suffering humiliation, the part of me that feels like not enough. I think it's a lifetime process, but I've gotten to the point now where I can at least identify when it's going on. So what fear are you aware of right now that is asking you to listen to it? What's going on inside you that's asking you to listen? What can you cultivate openness toward? Because I think once we cultivate an attitude of openness to these shadows, we start to see what's really there. A need that we can meet, a belief that we can change. Sometimes it's simply giving ourselves permission to stop eating the soup, stop telling the story. And then everything changes. Everything changes, because when you see the fear, you realize that the fear has no reality. None. The only thing that has reality is you. That brilliant, shining, powerful, spiritual being called you. That's the reality. You are the cause of your life. So instead of choosing to tell someone about the fear, including yourself, to eat the soup, look instead to that light that dwells at your very center, and let that light shine on the path of your journey. And so now I want to invite you into this practice called spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer. It has 5 steps, and you can hear them if you want. Otherwise, you can just let the words enter you. First, I've forgotten the first step. This is good. This is not good. Anyway, we identify. We acknowledge that there's only spirit, that there's nothing outside of it, and then we remember that we're one with it, and then we state what it is that we're seeking to have happen, and then we say thank you, and then we let it go. That's basically it. So, sorry I messed up there. Couldn't remember the names, but just allow my words to be your words for a moment. As I acknowledge what I know to be true, that there is only one life, and we are all part of it. We all partake of it. That there is only one creative energy in the universe, the thing that caused the entire universe to come into being. And it continues to maintain planets in their orbits, and galaxies in their places, and people and animals and plants and sky and weather and oceans, and all the way down to those subatomic particles, just where they need to be in every atom. It is the glue that holds everything together, and it is also the creative force that gave rise to it. Some people call it God, Spirit, Allah, Great Spirit, Universal Intelligence. It goes by a million names, yet it is the same. It is the oneness that we are all participating in. the oneness that lives in us and as us and through us into the world, that lives through our hearts and our minds, through our willingness and our unconditional love, that makes itself known in the world through each one of us. And so I know that right where I am, it is. And I know that that is true of each one of us. That same power and intelligence and wisdom that created everything operates in me and in you and in everyone. And so I know for each one of us right now that the courage that we need is present. That the wisdom that we need is present. It's already present within us. That everything we could need to lean forward and to look at our fear and embrace it and allow it to give us its lesson, we already have. Because each one of us is that perfect spiritual being, the very life of God. Looking out through our eyes are the eyes of God, and beating in our chests is the heart of God. And so I simply know that this is the truth of each one of us, and fear vanishes. Hesitance vanishes. All the conditions, all the soup simply disappears because it is not real. What is real is this light of spirit in all. And so I say thank you. I just express my gratitude for this amazing adventure we call life, and for every part of it. And from this place of gratitude, I release these words knowing that the universe always says yes to me, so they will not come back void, but completely filled with promise, completely completed and done. And so I just let it be. And we acknowledge it and anchor it by saying together, and so it is.
I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am.
What a precious thing to remember. We now have an opportunity to invest in our spiritual community, and that means an investment in our own spiritual growth. So if you are watching this on video, you can just click the donate link on our homepage and contribute as well. And this is a moment to be grateful. This is a moment to remember all the things that bless us in our lives. We have so much to be grateful for. We have so much good in our lives, and include the blessing of community, that we support one another and encourage one another, and in return are so richly supported. And so please repeat after me. My gift goes forth to bless and to prosper.
My gift goes forth to bless and to prosper.
It does its good and perfect work,
It does its good and perfect work,
and returns to me multiplied abundantly.
and and returns to me multiplied abundantly.
I am grateful,
I am grateful,
and so it is.
so it is.